Hey everyone, this is Brad Hughes, School Principal and Chief Encouragement Officer from Ontario, Canada. And I've got some good news for you. You found the Good News, Brad News podcast, amplifying stories of heart-led educators moving from positive intention to action. Great people like you, improving kids' lives through service, connection, and finding the fun. So glad you're here. Let's get started. Hello there, welcome back, and thanks for tuning in to the Good News, Brad News podcast. I am your host, Brad Hughes, and as you settle in and get comfortable, if you listen carefully, you can probably hear the instruments tuning up and getting ready for the premiere of episode 28, featuring someone who has really orchestrated a lot of success. My guest, the multi-talented Dennis Mathew. A husband, father, elementary school speech pathologist, singer-songwriter, and author from Mustang, Oklahoma, U.S.A. Dennis has been serving and inspiring students and educators in schools and through nonprofit work for over 20 years. He started out focused on a future in speech pathology in clinical and medical settings. But it was just 1 week into a mandatory placement at a local elementary school that Dennis realized that his purpose and his calling were to work with children for the foreseeable future. And as you'll hear, the magic and energy of that school placement, as well as his own life experiences, were instrumental to a career as a children's book author and school performer. Dennis's books include Bello the Cello, My Wild First Day of School, and How Grizzly Found Gratitude. He's also published a music album for schools called The Let's Roar Experience. Now, Dennis makes sure that social emotional learning, critical thinking, and healing are integral to all of his work, his books, his music, and his pathology practice. He helps young people meet and navigate real challenges with a blend of hopefulness and concrete strategies. And he cherishes the deep conversations he has with his student audiences. The everyday classroom teacher and the students that are the underdogs in his or her classroom are the hearts that he's trying to reach with his message. And that message? The future is bright because you're taking it on. Service, humility, growth. All themes that Dennis returns to again and again. And Dennis's reach and influence are growing. His books and music have reached tens of thousands of students, and he continues to connect daily with other educators from all corners of the world. Even so, Dennis describes himself as just a guy who's still finding his voice and figuring out his story and his role in the world, growing as a parent and partner, a creator, and a difference maker for kids. I know you'll enjoy getting to know Dennis today, and after hearing his story, you'll be eager to connect with him too. I won't string you along any further. Here's my interview with Dennis Mathew, today on the Good News, Brad News podcast. I want to welcome you back to the Good News, Brad News podcast, where I'm connecting with Dennis Mathew, a multi-talented educator, author, and creator. Dennis, welcome, and thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
Dude, it's a huge honor, and I've been kind of watching you from a distance, reading your posts, got to listen to a guest appearance you did on a podcast, and I was like, I immediately wanted to get a hold of you, and I did. This is another chapter, I feel, in what is the story of my life, where every day I'm connecting with another educator from all parts of the world. So thank you for having me be a part of your story. I appreciate it.
Dennis, I would love to hear more about all of your different roles, your community, family, professional roles. What does the world need to know about the incredible Dennis Mathew?
Man, well, I don't know if I'm incredible. I'll just say I'm discovering, even at 38, I feel like I'm discovering my story as days go by, just like we work with our kiddos, our students, and we tell them to take each moment as it comes. And with each passing moment, time reveals who students are to themselves. And I feel like we leave it at that. We tell our kids, give yourself time to discover who you are, and then at some point we kind of, without saying it, I feel like we tell them from that discovery process, at some point you graduate and then you become perfect at around whatever age, right? And at 38, I still feel like, bro, I'm still learning who I am. So thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it. But I'm just a guy who's just trying to figure out who I am, what my story is, what my role is in this world. One of the most important roles that I take is that of a husband and a father. I feel like almost everything that I do is about my girls. I'm married to a wonderful, amazing woman who is a big part of why I am who I am today. So much of my growth has been because of who I'm married to. She's been very instrumental in my growth as a person. And then my daughter, man, every passing day, again, I feel like, man, yeah, okay, I'm 15 years into speech pathology as an elementary school speech pathologist, but I'm only 2.5 years into parenting, and I'm a student at that. I'm at the pre-K kindergarten level of the school of parenting. Every day, my daughter wows me, humbles me, teaches me something. So, I take those two roles with great honor. And I feel like everything else that I do somehow feeds that or is an extension of that. I draw my life source, my energy from spending time with my girls. So, my role as a husband, my role as a dad is very important. And then by the grace of God, I am going into my 15th year as an elementary school speech pathologist. I'm never thought when I came out of, if you had told me in 2006, 2007 that my story would be what it is today, I would laugh at you in your face. You know what I mean? Because I was a kid, and I say kid, but even into my 20s, early 20s, my first 3 years of college, I honestly had no idea what I wanted to do with my life because I've always been that kid, always been that person that just likes everything. Like sports, yeah, I love sports. Love broadcasting, yeah, I love broadcasting. Love arts, yes, love arts. So what do you want to do with your life? I have no idea. Right, so first 2 to 3 years of college, man, just really wandered trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And had it not been, and I texted her yesterday to say thank you. We often say one person can make a difference. Man, I am truly at the receiving end of that. One person truly did make a big impact on my life just with the subtle nudge that she gave me. And this was my mentor, speech pathologist, at the school where I student taught. With about 4 months left to graduate, I had done a bunch of medical speech pathology rotation. And I kept telling my clinic coordinator, don't put me in a school because if I go into education, I'm not going to make money. I want to make money, and speech pathologists get paid a lot in the medical setting. Now, I care about people. I've always cared about people, but I also wanted the financial benefits of the field that I was in. And I said, I'm so focused on working in the medical field. She said, okay, but by state law requirements, we have to put you in a school. So let that be at least be the last few months of your education. There is an elementary school right down the street, 7 minutes away from where you live. Just take 4 months of this last semester and spend it there and get some hours. And I said, all right, fine. I walked into Mustang Creek Elementary, and my mentor at the time, dear friend of mine even now, Jennifer Williams, she's a career speech pathologist. I remember on day one outright telling her, I'm just here to get the hours. I have no intentions of working in the education setting. And man, just a week later into that rotation, I was like, I think I've found my calling. I think I want to work with children for the foreseeable future. And I don't know how I did not piece. I mean, there were trails, clues all along the way that said that I was gifted at working with children. How I did not pick up on those clues just blows my mind away. I mean, even going back to 7 years old, 8 years old, I mean, there were babies and little children in the church. I was drawn to them, they were drawn to me. And there were little babies that would fuss for everybody else, but if as an 8-year old I could pick up a little baby and they would just calm down in my presence. And there were clues all along, Brad. And that minute when I sat with my friend Jennifer and I said, I think I found my calling. It all kind of started, the pieces started puzzling, pieces started coming together. And that's rediscovery, right? So I feel like in our subconscious, or like as we grow as people, husbands, fathers, mothers, sisters, brothers, as life goes on, I think life has a way of telling us what the clues are. But up until we arrive at those crossroad moments, the past does not quite come calling to us. And I felt like when I was sitting at the table at that in the office telling Jennifer Williams that I found my calling, so to speak. And it wasn't necessarily speech pathology. I was saying, man, I have a gift to work with kids. And all of a sudden the past started sending memories. Do you remember this point? Do you remember this point? When you were 11, do you remember this happened? And I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't I pick that up? And all of a sudden, the need to make a big income and all that just kind of fizzled out. And the need to step into my purpose, step into my calling, just kind of started talking to me really loudly. It was that first year at Mustang Creek Elementary where this little, spark was ignited in me that said, man, if I could, that school that I worked for, Mustang Creek Elementary, was just a magical place. It was this kind of school that if you could bottle the energy in that building, that's the stuff that feeds Disney movies and Pixar movies, right? Like all of those fairy tales, fantasy, feel good things out there in the world, man. I was walking in it at Mustang Creek Elementary, and I found myself saying, man, if I could capture this energy in the building and put it into a book. That was 2007, 2008. I had that thought. I shelved that thought and went on doing speech pathology. I hit a season of unemployment. Man, those 4 months where I could not find a job was misery. We'd wake up every morning and my wife would go to work, and I'd just sit there with a cup of coffee and think to myself, my wife's going to work. I'm just sitting home. I can't do anything about this. I'm putting resumes out. Nothing's coming back. And all of a sudden, this thought came to my mind, man, I had an idea for a book. And because I'm a busybody, I remember let me just do something with it. I have no idea what to do on how to make a book, but I'm just going to open my laptop and just start typing up the story I have in my mind. Give it about 2 to 3 weeks. I ended up with a beginning, middle, and an end for this story. And I was like, okay, now what? I know I need a writing coach, but I'm not a professional writer. So I get on Google and I literally went, find a writing coach. And a company's name popped up. A couple days later, a young man from Austin, Texas named Nick Courtwright contacted me, and he was like, hey man, I would love to look at your story. Would love to walk you through what it takes to make a good story. Fast forward 2 to 3 more weeks later, the story Bello the Cello was finished. Not the book, the manuscript was finished. And he was like, hey man, I just launched my own independent publishing company. I'd love to take you on. You'd be my first children's book. I was like, okay, let's do it. And he was like, do you have an illustrator? No, but let me do some research. A mutual friend connected me with an illustrator. Brad, it's been 3 years since this guy was published. We're coming up on over 10,000 copies sold. It has spurred on 2 more books. Yeah, between those 3 titles, we're looking at 20,000 copies sold, 120 schools reached, 70-something thousand students reached with these books. What it has taught me is you don't have to get to that place of I've arrived. That's where I feel like we kind of turn the switch off on the blessings that we're supposed to meet or be introduced to. If we keep an open heart and keep a humble heart, I feel like opportunities will just kind of pop up in our eyes, right? And so just staying humble, going back to roles, husband, father, speech pathology, picked up songwriting along the way, standing back about 100 feet back and just kind of looking at all of these roles, especially in the domain of education, speech pathology, authorship, and songwriting. For me, it's all about discovering my own voice, discovering myself in the songs that I write, in the books that I write, and even in my own profession, I'm discovering deeper levels of who Dennis Mathew is as a speech therapist.
I'd love to get your thoughts on roles for the creative arts, like writing, visual arts, music, performing arts, to connect and heal our schools and communities at a time when it may never have been needed more.
Let's talk about healing. Each of us, you, myself, every single person listening, We're all dealing with trauma on varying degrees for different reasons. I mean, we all need healing on different levels. My audiences will tell you I don't skirt around the need for healing in our world. With my songs, with my books, I just go for it. Man, I have some very deep conversations with my middle school audiences, high school audiences, and not surprising anymore, even our elementary school, our primary grade students, their antennas are on to the fact that we live in a broken world. And just positive thinking and optimistic outlooks without intentional, concrete strategies behind it won't do us any good. And for example, there's no more a need for turning a blind eye to racism or the lack of equity in our practices and access to resources for our children, our babies, our families, our parents, right? There are issues going on in this world, and we need strategies and tools to navigate those issues. So I just try to do what I can. One way I try to bring healing or start up conversations that talk about the need for healing is by intentionally inserting conflict into my stories and inserting the rawness of emotion into my songs. Will you be light in the darkest places? So that's a line in my song, will you be light in darkest places? So when I sing it out, I'm planting these seeds in the minds of children and saying the world has lots of pockets of darkness. But guess what? You and I can be light. Planting those seeds in the lives of these little babies to say, listen, the future is bright because you're taking it on, right? And so, we talk about how different authors tap into different things to write stories. And I always tell my children that I'm presenting to, Mr. Mathew has gone through some tough times in his life, and he uses those life stories to write so that his lessons can be somebody else's blessing, right? And I tell these kiddos, hey, guess what? If you're going through a tough time right now, turn that into a story. Turn that into a picture. Turn that into a song. Don't just let it be a happening. Use it for good, right? So the whole idea of we can turn bad into good. That's how I weave the need, the urgency for healing into my work. When you do an author visit, you go into school and you spend a day with the school or 45 minutes with the class or whatever. So you get to plant seeds in short bursts of time and you move on, hoping that the teachers there will plant the seed and water the seed. You know what I mean? Now, I often get asked, well, Mr. Mathew, your books are taken off, you're on podcasts, you're this and that. Maybe you need to just start traveling full time. And man, I'm just like, I don't know about you, but I want my roots planted somewhere. Yesterday I did a podcast interview and the host was like, sounds like you are the teacher's author. Sounds like you really write to speak into what the classroom's dealing with. And I said, yes. And one of the big reasons why I want to stay planted at a local elementary school is because I want to stay connected to everyday boots on the ground teachers, librarians, counselors, principals, special educators. And I want to have my hand to the pulse to say, what is happening in the classroom today that teachers are dealing with that I can inform through my books and my songs? So whether that's trauma-informed practices or trauma-informed language or social-emotional learning or the 7 mindsets or the growth mindset, I touch on these things in my stories and songs so that teachers can then easily pull it into the classroom and use it as curriculum material. I make sure that healing's inserted into all of my work, in my books, my music, and my practice. But the everyday classroom teacher and the student who's the underdog in his or her classroom, that is the heart that I'm trying to reach with my message.
Dennis, you've planted amazing seeds with me, and I want to know how listeners who want to grow along with you can best reach you to find out more about your fantastic work.
I just put up a new updated website, so booksbydennis.com is a great way to get a hold of me. My heart strongly desires to bring my message to the classrooms, to the libraries, to the hallways of your school building. So I want to connect with educators out there. So my website, booksbydennis.com, is a great place to find me. On Instagram, my handle is booksbydennis. On Twitter, I am storiesbydennis. If you're friends with Brad on Facebook, we're friends on there. Find me, add me. My email, if you go to my website and fill out the contact form, that comes to my email. So whoever's been listening, it is an honor and a joy, a pleasure. Thank you so much that you would give some time out of your day to listen to this dude in Mustang, Oklahoma. Thank you, Brad.
Dennis, what an enriching and inspiring conversation. Thank you for your commitment. Thanks for prioritizing giving kids a voice. And I want to wish you continued success in everything that you do, both at home and in your great work. Dennis Mathew, thanks again.
Thank you, Brad. This was a great honor. I appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Good News, Brad News podcast. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment wherever you found this podcast. And if you like what you heard, please recommend Good News, Brad News to a friend. And please hit me up on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. You can find me at Brad, BRAD _Hughes, HUGHES. I look forward to hearing from you and to reconnecting with you on our next episode. Until then, get out there and do amazing things.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at teachbetter.com/podcasts, and we'll see you at the next episode.